this is an ongoing effort that our entire team is committed to, and that is to make sure that we have a presence throughout the state. Because when voters voted for Measure 99, which I'll talk about in a moment, the intent was not for Corvallis or the Valley or for Portland. The intent was for every community across our state. And so we're committed to being in every community, getting to know every community, and being present in terms of holding our meetings across the state. And so it's been great to be out here in Pendleton and the eastern part of the state. Certainly there's a lot more east of us. And so we'll be traveling back out in that direction at some point. In Southern Oregon next week, and doing some similar work at a conference there, but just our ongoing commitment to serving all the communities in Oregon. So I want to start off by just briefly talking about, I can't see what slide is up, so it says Measure 99, right? Great, okay. So little background, and I'm sure some of you know this, but I think it's important to recognize the history and the work and the effort that has been going on for a long time in our state. Certainly outdoor school is not new. We have schools out here that have been doing it since the late 50s, 40 years, 50 years. So this is not new in terms of schools participating and providing programming in the outdoors. What is new, however, is our state's financial commitment through voters to make sure that that opportunity that has been happening in these communities is available to every single student in every single school district in every single school. So that is what's new and what continues to develop as Measure 99 and the voters' passage of that through lottery funds. The state legislature then passed Senate Bill 439, which sort of codified that into law and specified the actual dollar amount and sort of what the expectations were of schools if they wanted to access those funds. Also want to recognize that we are here because of the work of the schools and the folks who've been doing outdoor school long before there was state funding. Many of them doing fundraising and working with community partners and even doing things like selling candy bars and having bake sales to make sure that outdoor school is possible. So we want to honor that effort. Also honoring the effort of the folks, thousands of them, who worked diligently, going door to door even, to convince people that this was the right thing to do in our state. Certainly, it's not always popular to designate or spend funds. This is one of those things that voters felt very passionate about. And I do want to just mention and honor the fact that we have one of our advisory committee members here who was part of all of that effort and work. So, Ing, if you wave or stand up and just say hello to everybody. So we've had our advisory committee meeting here the last couple of days. And so Priscilla stayed around an extra day, time out of her life to be with us, to be here for support. So we appreciate that very much. So want to just give you some information. A lot of people ask, so what do we need to do to access state funds? Or if we're a new school system, what do we do if we want to jump into the game? So there were some criteria set forth to provide some guidelines, but also some flexibility in terms of what outdoor school needs to look like if state funding will be accessed. And so the first thing that I would mention is that the standard was set at least 3 consecutive days. The funding then can go up all the way through 6 days, 5 nights. So the good news is there is some latitude and some ability for districts to design programming that meets the needs of their students, their communities, and their educators. So we recognize out here it's more common to have 4-day school weeks. So perhaps a 6-day program is a little more challenging, but the 3 consecutive days is kind of the benchmark of what you need to enter. Notice that's consecutive days. It does not require overnight. For some schools, it's a little less of a burden to enter or begin an outdoor program. Just busing kids to a facility for the day, and then busing them home. So you're not worried about lodging. You're not worried about overnight, all of that kind of stuff. We do encourage that districts investigate and try to plan for an eventual residential experience. But we also recognize that not every student can participate in that type of experience. And so there's some flexibility about how you can set up your programming. Program guidelines are posted there. I'm not going to read them all to you. So those are things that you can access on our website. But the legislature was very clear around the things that should be covered at outdoor schools to qualify for state funding. We recognize when you see those things, that's a pretty long list. And if you actually look at the legislation, it's several pages long if you print it. So what we've tried to do is distill a lot of that and make it simple for educators if they're designing a program, so they don't feel like it's overwhelming. We really have tried hard to make it easy to get into the outdoor school program rather than make it challenging. The one other thing that I would point out is that there is no state curriculum for outdoor school. That is by design. So I think, you look back at the very beginning of this process, many schools and districts were doing their own thing. They had customized a program for their community and their students. And there was a fear with Measure 99 that the state then could come in and say, no, this is how it will be now. So we want to echo as much as we can that that's not going to be the case. That outdoor school is designed to be customized for your school, your students, and your community. And so the focus that you might have on the natural resources, the environment that you have here is very different than what it might look like in Newport on the coast. That's okay. But I'll also mention that there's some flexibility, and we've had some really, really innovative educators who have designed programming where they recognize that their students get the experience in the community that they live in. So they've designed a program where they take students to a different part of the state and have them experience a different environment, a different climate. So a lot of that innovation is happening, and we encourage you to think about doing outdoor school for a while. Now you have resources that you haven't had in the past, and so maybe there's opportunity to design some different types of experiences for your students. So we're now in year 2. The good news is we're still accepting applications. So if you find yourself here and you know about a school or a district that has not applied for funds, it's not too late. In fact, we will accept applications throughout the fall. I think our deadline is December-ish. So at that point, it becomes difficult for us to process an application, go through all the documentation, and get you a board notification in time for you to plan something, which you only have the spring left. So we really encourage early rather than later, but certainly it's still available and there's funds available. So highly encourage you if out here today you have any questions, or we can guide you through that process. We've also made the application very simple. Year 1, we started in September, and we had to get funding out for fall and spring. So our challenge was to get it out as quickly as possible, but still have high quality and a high quality application. So it was an Excel spreadsheet, essentially. And so it was a little challenging, I think, for schools that have been doing it a while to try to fit what they do into that spreadsheet. It was also challenging for new schools when they opened it up and looked at it and said, oh, wow, it's a lot. So this year's application was simplified by setting a state threshold for the type of program that you offer. So if you offer a 6-day, 5-night program, there's a dollar amount already populated. And if that dollar amount met your needs, your costs, you're done. Application's done. Submit. Everybody's happy. If for some reason that did not meet your costs, you're not done. You just have to provide some more documentation around what your costs are and why. So some of those things that would be higher cost is if you are a rural school system and the distance to travel to get to the next facility or closest facility is farther than the average, and that would be a reason you can apply for more funds. If you are in a school system with high degree of free and reduced lunch population, that could be a reason. Perhaps you need to buy some equipment for those students to feel comfortable in the outdoors. So equipment is allowed when you're purchasing. It may be that you have to purchase some accommodation materials. We had some schools purchase specialized wheelchairs for students with disabilities. That's allowable. And we also had schools that paid for additional staff to be on hand for students with special needs. So the goal is, and it's a high priority for us, do not be afraid of submitting costs, even if they're high, if those costs are designed to get students who otherwise could not participate. So I just want to really emphasize that, because there's always a fear when you apply for funds and grants. Well, gosh, if we ask for too much, we might not get anything because it looks like we're being greedy. But then there's also schools that sometimes ask for too little. So I would suggest to you, if you've been doing outdoor school for a while and you've been getting by, you've been nickel and diming things to just make it work, if you've been really burning out volunteers that you might have an opportunity now to improve the program and sort of move away from that just sort of duct tape and bailing wire attitude to put your program together, that now you have resources to ensure quality. And we're happy about that. I mean, that's really one of the reasons. And I'd also suggest to you that it should be, again, we don't really mandate anything, but we certainly try to educate folks. There certainly should not be any reason why you would charge students for outdoor school. So if you come up with your cost and your dollar amount and you build into that, and students will contribute $20 or $50, I might suggest to you just to add that cost into your application and not charge students anything. That's one of the rules. So I'm going to put that out to you. A lot of objectives there. Some of them have just been accomplished, but we still have 3 more staff members to hire. And so it is a challenge. We certainly are very fiscally sensitive to spending and funding because the majority of funds obviously are for students in programming and communities. But we believe in a balance. And so that balance is how can we be as lean as possible and support the over 55,000 students that will be impacted by outdoor school, while at the same time not having too many of us or spending too many resources on our staff, because staff is what costs us money. So, so you've seen the staff that exists here. We are all Corvallis based, but on 7th we closed our 3 regional positions. And so there will be a regional outdoor school coordinator here that will be stationed most likely in Baker. There's some flexibility in that. And so that person will be here in the community and be able to serve schools on a daily basis. And so that doesn't mean that our team doesn't support the schools here. It doesn't mean we won't be out here. It just means that there's someone that every single day is going to be thinking about Eastern Oregon, which is very large. But that will be their mission every single day. And so that's very powerful. We'll also have someone in the metro region, probably a region with the most resources available to support outdoor school. Just in terms of sheer number of students, it's kind of overwhelming to think about. If I were applying for that position, I'm thinking like that's a lot of folks I'm getting to meet with and visit and support. So certainly, again, we will be supporting that person, but we'll have someone up there for those community partnerships. And then a 3rd position in Southern Oregon. Southern Oregon, one of the biggest challenges there is facilities. There's not enough of them and they're far. So certainly if you live in the southeast part of the state, it is challenging to try to put together an outdoor school when it might be a 4-hour drive to get to a facility. So that person is really going to specialize in trying to help that situation. We have a lot of partners, including state parks and some other organizations that are going to be able to help with that. So we're really working hard to try to bring those people to the table, because as participation grows, capacity with the existing facilities becomes challenging. And so that's one of the areas we're going to have to work with hard. A couple other things I just want to point out here: providing resources, which the rest of the team will talk about. But we're really working hard to provide excellent customer service, which sometimes in the education world, that's not something you hear a lot. Even in universities, sometimes it's not something you hear a lot. Our goal is to answer the phone, which doesn't always happen in education communities, and to give you the answer and the help that you need as quickly as possible. And so whether it's email, phone calls, a visit, when you need something, I highly encourage you to reach out, because that's been a priority of us. And so even when we're up to the 200 or 300 emails a day, our goal is to get back to those folks in 24 hours. If for some reason you ever don't hear back from us, you should reach out again, because probably something's wrong, because that's our goal. So one example might be this week when we've been out here, we probably have not been as aggressive at getting back to folks. We have out of offices on our emails posted, but it's a commitment. When you need help and you're sitting on an application that you need to submit at 5 p.m., us getting back to you 2 days from that point is not a good help. So always call or email and we'll get back to you quickly. Some people like work charts, some people don't, but I just wanted to share with you that there are a lot of folks that support the work that we do. Certainly our team, through me, I report to Scott Reed, who's the Vice Provost of Outreach and Engagement and Director of the Extension Service. So we have his ear when we need something. So that's also very powerful. This is a program that not only OSU Extension university as a whole, the provost of the university, the president of the university, know about outdoor school and support outdoor school. So we're in a unique situation where we need something, they're right there to help us. So we have the whole support of the university behind this work happening. I also wanted to point out, I mentioned the advisory committee. They've been really instrumental in getting things started and now serving the advisory role. So those folks are from all over the state and provide input, guidance, feedback. They're in communities, they hear things and they tell us so that we can continue to improve. And we also have a group of resource groups. Those folks are kind of experts in a specific field that we reach out to for guidance in certain areas. So you see the 6 areas there. Those folks, depending on what we're working on, will provide assistance. So we don't try to do everything ourselves because then the knowledge capacity is a lot smaller than we involve a lot of folks. So that's also a commitment. Spirit, we'll talk about evaluation, so I will skip over this part. But I did want to mention some of our high priorities. So one of the things that's important when we say all students, because when voters went to the polls, there was not conditions, there was no asterisk that said outdoor school for all, except when there was people listed. It was clear that outdoor school is for all students. So it's important for us when we talk about our goals. Number one goal is to get every eligible school system, district, school participating in outdoor school. And so in some cases that means meeting with them, talking to them, convincing them, guiding them, supporting them, connecting them with other districts who have gone through the process already, providing whatever support they need to get into the game, get into outdoor school. The second priority is we know that not every student attends outdoor school, even if their school participates. So we have 2 priority areas: every school system, every student within that school system. In some cases, that means that we may have to design programming that is the same quality and the same educational outcomes, but it may look different. And so a couple of examples might be, we have students whose parents just say, they're not going overnight, period. It's not gonna happen. And while we try to educate parents on the benefits of outdoor school, we certainly don't want to go into a family and try to change their values. So in some cases it might be, we have schools that apply for funds for outdoor school or traditional program. They also can use funds to design a similar program that has the same educational outcomes for students who may not go overnight. And that may be that you send students to a facility or a camp, and you have some students stay back and they do a day program. They still get that experience. And I would suggest if you think about that, to reach out to us and we can help you. There's some programs doing that. And also, the important thing is that those happen at the same time. Because what we've heard from some districts is students will go to outdoor school and those 10 students that don't go to the library, they have a sub for 4 days, and they read books. They might even be about the outdoors, but they have to do questions at the end of the day and turn those in. So you think about students out there having this phenomenal experience and students stuck in the library with a book. And then think about Monday, when those students that were on that experience come back and interact with the students who are in the library, how that might feel. And so we're really purposeful about educating districts that you can apply for funds to do both. And we want to support that. The other piece is students with disabilities. I want to really emphasize that if you need additional resources to get those students out to that program, we have the funds to do that. Please ask for them. But we also realize that there may be some programming that needs to look a little different, or that maybe we need some guidance on finding a facility that is more accessible for certain types of students. So please reach out to us for support in that way, because we want to make sure every student goes. Kind of wrapping up, I just want to point out that we're thrilled at the participation in the first year. We're thrilled we received applications for next year. We're thrilled at those numbers, and I just want to mention that these final numbers will be edited slightly. Our final report from year 1 will come out in the next month or so, and that will be available to the public on our website. So you'll have the actual finalized dollar amounts of student numbers. But what I can tell you is that participation did exceed our expectations. So participation for next year has grown tremendously. So we have a lot of work to do. It's not 100%, but it's certainly moving in that direction. We're going to work hard to continue to do that. Last thing that I'll share is why. And I think probably most of you are here because you believe in outdoor school, and I'm happy to convince you why, but you may be around folks that you have to convince. So the two things that I'd suggest before I kind of reemphasize these 6 things is, one, we're happy to help you. We don't go to meetings that we're not invited to, but if we're invited, we'll certainly come and provide information and data. So if we're invited to a board meeting, if we're invited to meet with a superintendent or administrator, we would happily accept that and we would be present and assist. If you need more of an advocacy group, like you want to have parents show up to a school board meeting to rally and say, why are we doing this? That's not our role, but we can connect you with Friends of Outdoor School. They are an political action organization and a resource and a support group who can help educate parents on how to go to board meetings and talk to administrators about why outdoor school is important. So you kind of have information from us, guidance, if you need more of that kind of support, and Friends of Outdoor School is a great organization we can connect you with. But these are kind of the talking points we ask people to talk about. We know that our youth need to be outdoors more. And certainly, I was talking earlier, I grew up in the outdoors, I grew up on a farm, but certainly working outside is different than being in an educational setting outside. So that was a benefit when I actually took outdoor school, 5th and 6th grade. We also know it helps academic performance. So if you're more an educator or administrator, there's unwavering evidence that outdoor school has a positive impact on so many aspects of students' lives, including their performance in science and math and literacy. There's also less discipline issues, surprisingly. One of the reasons often students are not allowed to go to outdoor school is because they misbehave. Again, I would challenge you to try to break that myth. What we often find is the students that misbehave most, who are not a safety risk, the students who misbehave most, when they attend outdoor school, they tend to be some of the best behaved performing students at outdoor school. You're putting them in an environment where they thrive. So that's one of the myths that we try to break. Then the last one is making sure every student can participate equity, and before that, the economic impact that outdoor school has. We ran some numbers just in preparation. We're going to fund around $1 million in outdoor school programming just in this part of the state. So when you think about educators and food and supplies, camps, people who work for those camps, there is an economic impact to supporting more schools to